Hello and welcome back to our watercolour lesson 2. Yesterday, hopefully you managed to do a watercolour warm-up. If you haven't done that, don't worry, it just might help you with some of the techniques that we're going to be discussing today. But first of all, the thing that I want to talk about is the fact that we've been out for a spring walk and some of the things that we saw in spring. And straight away, something that I've noticed that's showing that spring is just about on its way, because we're still at the end of winter, beginning of spring, are the daffodils. Now they're starting to sell them in the shops. I've got some daffodils that are still in bud at the moment. They haven't come out yet. And I have seen some daffodils that have been early near my neighbour's house and at the bottom of my road. So we're going to have a go at drawing a beautiful daffodil scene and using some of our watercolour techniques to add some beautiful colour. First of all, we're going to draw it. So I'll take you through that step by step. So when drawing a daffodil, it's a good idea to start with the cup in the centre. You need a small circle at the bottom of the cup. So I'm actually going to draw this daffodil kind of in the middle of my picture here. So I'm going to draw a small oval, that's the bottom of the cup. I'm not pressing hard at all, very lightly. And then I'm going to draw a larger one at the end of the cup. Okay, and it's not too far away. So I'm going to draw a larger one just about here. Okay, and if I make, it doesn't matter I'm not going to use a rubber, you can if you want, but it doesn't have to be precise. Okay, so that's the start of my daffodil there. Now I'm going to join them together with a curved line. So you can see like that, I'm joining them together with a curved line. Doesn't have to be very curved, but that's the centre of the daffodil. Looks a little bit like a bell, doesn't it? Okay. Right, now the next thing to do with this daffodil is to add the petals. So we're going to add the petals now, and I'm going to start with this petal that sort of starts here. Okay, I'm going to add this petal first, and then I'm going to go round. And as I go round, you can decide on the shape of your petals. They don't have to be exact. You can see they've overlapped slightly. Can you see that there? That my petals are overlapping. Okay. So I've got one petal there, 2, 3. I'm going to do another petal up here, like that. And then my 5th petal, so I've got 1, 2, 3, 4, and they've all overlapped a little bit, haven't they? My 5th petal is a little bit hidden behind this bell. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to draw the start of it here, and then I'm going to go down, but I'm going to stop when I get to the bell, because the bell head is hiding the rest of my petal. Okay, so hopefully you can see that nice and clearly. So I've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. If you want to pause the video, if I'm going a little bit fast, pause the video and just catch up when you're ready. Okay, so that's my first daffodil that I am going to draw. I'm going to draw the next one about here. Now the next one, I want it pointing in a different direction. So that daffodil's pointing that way, isn't it? The next one's going to be facing forward. So when daffodils face forward, we can see inside this cup. So we're looking inside this time. So I'm going to draw my cup very close to this petal here. And this time I'm going to draw sort of like a wibbly circle. Can you see that? Like a wibbly little circle. So I'm going to draw that onto that paper. And I'm going to do a little wibbly centre. And then you can just see the edge of the cup, just that side. So that's my cup facing forward, the centre of the daffodil facing forward, so we can see inside it. So we can actually only see a tiny bit of the side of the daffodil, which is this bit, and I'm only going to draw it on one side. So that bit there is this bit here. But because we're facing forward, we can't see much of it. Okay, so now you've got daffodil 1, and this is daffodil 2, and daffodil 2 needs some petals. And we're going to do 5 petals on that daffodil as well. Okay, so I'm going to start with this petal down here, and I'm going to do daffodil, that's the first petal. So have a go at drawing the first petal with that daffodil. Once you've done the first petal, we're going to add the next one, and then that's my next petal. And can you see I've gone over it again, so I'm just overlapping them slightly. Then I'm going to add petal number 3, and I'm going to overlap again. Petal number 3. They don't have to be exact, because all petals, they kind of dance in the wind, don't they? And the petals do change shape and colour, and they're all slightly different anyway. So no one daffodil is the same as the other, so please don't worry. I've drawn petal number 4 there. Can you see that? And petal number 5 is going to be behind this daffodil. And with drawings, you draw things in front and behind. So you've got something in front and something in behind. You can't see the rest of, you can't see all the shape. So I'm going to draw petal number 5 here. But actually, oh look, it's touching that petal. So I'm not actually going to draw the bit where it's touching it. So that's hiding behind it, okay? Don't worry, if you draw it over, then just get a little rubber and rub out the bit where it's overlapped. That's absolutely fine. So please don't worry about that. So I've got daffodil 1 and I've got daffodil 2 here. Now I am going to draw daffodil 3, but I'm going to, before I draw daffodil 3, I'm going to draw the stems of each flower first of all. And they're dancing in the wind. And the thing I love about daffodils is they stand really nice and tall. So we're going to draw some lovely tall stems. So very lightly, and I know I talk about this at school when I do art with you, but I'm not going to press up hard, and I'm going to keep just stroking it down. And I've got a nice long stem there. And then this one, I'm going to draw this one slightly curved actually, because this one's dancing in the wind. And this stem is going to stand nice and tall up here, and it's going to be a little bit curved as well because this one's dancing. And again, if it overlaps it slightly, that's fine. Just try and do, this one's going to be behind, so decide which one's in front and which one's behind, and how you're going to overlap it. So I've decided that this daffodil's behind this one, so that means that anything that touches this daffodil I need to rub out, or just don't draw it in the first place. So that's up to you whether you rub out later or you don't draw to start off with. So I'm now going to draw my 3rd daffodil and the petals. So I'm going to start with this top petal that's standing nice and tall, and I can see this top petal here. And then once I've done that top petal, I'm going to do the next petal. And actually what you'll want to see is I haven't drawn the cup, have I, for this daffodil? That's because I'm going to do this daffodil facing away. So I can't see the cup of this daffodil, I can only see the petals at the back. So this next petal is hidden by the stem a little bit, so I'm not going to draw that. And then I'm going to do, again, if you want to draw it and then rub it out, this one's hiding, and then I've got my 4th one. Look, can you see how I can draw it and then I can rub it out later? So they're my 5 petals, and if you want to change it slightly, that's absolutely fine, don't worry. You can just add it, change it, and then you can rub it out later, so that's absolutely fine, don't worry about that. So I've got my 3 daffodils now, that's all I'm going to draw. You might want to draw yours in slightly different positions, you might just want to draw one, it's totally up to you. But this is how I'm going to do mine. And then I'm going to add some extra tall leaves that look like grass. So I'm going to just kind of do it nice and, there we go, I'm going to draw one there, nice and fluid and nice and tall. They're not going to be as tall as the daffodils here. They don't have to be an exact shape, you don't have to worry about that at all. I'm going to have some grass that kind of goes that way and that way. If they overlap, don't worry. You can just draw them overlapping. We're going to paint these, so they really doesn't matter. Oh, and this one's gone off my paper. Can you see that? And then if you want them to go all the way down, you can. Just have a little play with that. And that's it. That's the drawing done. I'm hoping you can see that nice and clearly. But that's my drawing of my daffodils finished. Okay, so we're going to start painting our daffodils now. So remember to get your paintbrush ready, and we're going to try some of those techniques that we use to start off with. So I'm quite excited about this. So we're going to first of all paint the grass, and we're going to paint lots of grass just across there. It doesn't have to be exact. I know we haven't drawn a line or anything. And so I'm going to do that by creating a flat wash. So I'm going to create a flat wash with some green, and I'm going to create a nice green. And I'm going to remember that this one's the one that I'm tipping it into. So I'm going to mix my green on here. You can mix the two different greens as well to make the colour you want. So I'm going to make it a slightly lighter green. So I'm going to wash my brush in this one, remember? Just check, dip it in there. I'm going to make it slightly lighter green. It's a good idea to wash your brushes in between each one so the paints don't get messy. Okay, oh yes, that's better. I've got a nice lighter green for the grass there. Okay, I think that's probably going to be enough. So I'm going to wash my brush and get ready. And so the green that I'm going to use, I'm going to just use a flat wash. So I'm going to load, maybe put a tiny bit more paint in there. I'm going to load my brush up with the colour I want. And then I'm going to just drag it along. Do you remember how we did that before? Load it up and just drag it along. That's it. And you can see as you do that, it's quite a solid colour. There we go. So I'm going to load it up and drag it along as I go. And this is my flat wash. Now when I get kind of there, I might want to make it a little bit bumpy. I might want to kind of make it a little bit uneven because at the background. Now you can just drag it over these as well, so don't worry about those. You'll be able to see if you're not doing it too thick, you should still be able to see your grasses behind. If you can't, then just go up to it, or you can draw them over later, so that's absolutely fine. So I'm going to drag it across a little bit more, and I'm going to drag it across to get the green nearly finished. And I'm going to kind of, can you see how I'm just using, I don't want my grass to kind of be not completely flat at the back. I kind of want it a bit wibbly. There we go. So I've got my green wash. There we go. Green wash of grass. And just make sure it's all even. I need to just do this corner a little bit. So just have a go. You can pause this if you want to. Just make sure you've got your green wash. There we go. And it's mine's quite straight, so I'm just gonna, there we go. Right, so it's nice. So I want to make it, the grass look like it's swaying as well. So that's my background of my grass. Wash my brush. Make sure it's not green anymore. Perfect. Okay, now in between each of these, we need to leave them to dry. So you've got some choices here. You can either leave them to dry, or you can use a hairdryer. So I'm going to plug mine in the back. You'll need to get parents' permission for this. And have to be quite careful. So the thing I'm going to attempt now mine is nice and dry, and it is nice and dry. The thing I'm going to attempt now is I'm going to do the sky, and I'm actually going to use that using my wet on wet technique. I'm very excited about this, and I really hope it works. So if it doesn't, don't worry. The most important thing is that you don't get any colour on your daffodils. So if I were you, I would try and avoid that and add those a little bit later. So before I get my paper wet, I am actually going to mix up my colours for my sky. And I want it to be a lovely bright spring day. And I'm looking outside right now. I can see, I've got some lovely windows in my house, and the sky is getting bluer and bluer, which is really lovely in the spring. So I'm going to mix up some blues. I'm going to mix up one type of blue in this one. So I'm going to mix, there we go. Need to wash my brush then in between. So I've got, what type of blue here? I've got a nice royal blue here, haven't I? A nice royal blue. And I want to have a bit of a lighter blue as well. So I'm going to just here mix Actually, I think this one might be the thing. And then I might mix some white actually into this as well to make it look a bit like, maybe even some, yeah, let's try white first of all and see what kind of that does. That makes a nice, much lighter blue. Okay, let's have a look here. So that's my lighter blue that I've got there. I'm going to make sure I mix up lots of that so I can add a lighter blue effect. There we go. Ooh. You can see if I don't wash my brush before in between, look at what happens to my white paint. So it's a good idea to wash your brush. Don't follow my example. Right, and then I'm going to do a bit more of a violet. So a violet is a purple, and I think it'll be really nice. Goodness me, I get confused with these jars. It would be really nice to have a sort of a violety purple, because I think some of the spring sky can often see some of that violet, and a violet you get, oh, can you see that? You make purple, hopefully you all know this, you make a sort of violety purple with red. So you would add red to the blue to make a lovely purple colour. So can you see how it's gone a bit blue again, because I've added lots more blue. But I'm going to now add a bit more red to that to make my violet. Make my violet colour. So I've got like a lovely bluey violet there. I've got a light blue and I've got a dark blue. Okay, so do you remember with wet on wet, the thing first of all to do is to get your paper nice and wet. So I'm going to try and work fairly quickly here and get my paper nice and wet. So I'm going right up to the grass. I'm making sure I don't touch the daffodils, and I'm not going to go completely up to them. I'm going to paint around those separately. So I'm going to make sure the rest of my paper is nice and wet. I'm going to do a nice wet wash for the sky. But as I said, I'm not going to go too close to the daffodils because I don't want any of the colour to go onto them. So I think that's really important that we stay away from those, okay? Right, when you're happy, you might need to add some water if it's a warm day while you're doing this. Okay, so I'm going to start dropping some of my blues. There we go. I'm going to get my blue sky. And actually, I'm going to just drop it on, and do you remember, it kind of spreads like a firework a little bit. I'm going to add a bit more water onto this because I want this to be a really lovely, rich colour all over, and you can just play with that. You can spread it out a little bit. If you feel like you need to mix a little bit more, you can mix a bit more and just let it spread. Let the water do its thing and go right up to the corners and get that really nice sky colour. And then if you want to, as you get closer, you might want to be a little bit more careful and paint right by those, just so they don't get that water on. So can you see how I've got all that blue? Now I'm going to start mixing my next colour. So I'm going to wash my brush, I'm going to dip it in, and I'm going to start some of my lighter blue here. So I want some of my lighter, brighter blue to come through. Okay. Some of my bright, I'm going to add that other bit of blue there. There you go. That's making it a little bit. I think that's a nice thing. You can mix. Oh, look at that blue. Look at that blue. Just seeing if it can mix a little bit. There we go. I've got a little bit over my green, so just be very careful. The thing you don't want to get it onto, and you can see I'm being really careful around my daffodils, because you don't want this water to go onto the daffodils, because once you put yellow on top of this, it'll turn into a murky brown. So you need to keep that paper nice and white for your daffodils. And that's actually something I've found when we're mixing watercolours a lot. Actually, when you start putting lots and lots of colours together, it starts looking brown, and that's what very often happens, is you will get this kind of murky brown. Okay, and look, you could move it around if you want to. So I'm just kind of helping it mix a little bit. You might want to add a little bit of water. There you go, if you add some water, it really mixes it for you. Now I'm going to start adding maybe some of this purple in. I'm going to maybe do a little bit of this purple around this daffodil. Being really careful not to get it onto. Can you see how I'm being really extra careful around this daffodil? I'm going to paint right up to it, but I don't want any of that blue and purple paint to get onto there, which is really important. Really important. Oh, look, I'm going to get some more purple up here. Oh, I think this wet on wet effect has worked really well for my sky. And hopefully you're finding that as well. I'm going to clear my brush because I'm just going to add a bit more water here because I can tell that it's dried up a little bit. Oh, look, there you go. And I'm going to do a little bit more water down here. And I'm going to add a bit more blue, I think. And if it seeps into the grass, don't worry. That's absolutely fine. And just have a go at playing with this. So really, you might want to add some more water where it's dried, and that's absolutely fine. Again, just be really careful around the daffodils. And then just add your colours. You might want to add some slightly lighter blue if you want. Add your colours and just really enjoy making that sky effect, that really beautiful sky effect. You actually have to concentrate really, really well during this, especially when you're working, as I said, your way around those daffodils. Now you might want to pause the video while you work hard on this. Look, and this one's quite a lot darker, so I'm going to just paint some of my lighter blue around it to mix in. Just be really careful. That's it. You want some lovely white daffodil petals ready to soak up that beautiful yellow that we're going to add later. Okay, I'm going to do some darker purple just around this top, because there we go. And I think that is my sky completed. You might want to add a little bit more blue. You can just play with it a little bit, see what would work. Try not to do what I've done, which is drip lots of paint on the table again. Now this is a really good time to clean your brush and go and have a break, okay? Because you cannot do anything else until that's dry. So you might want to dry it with a hairdryer again, or you might want to just leave it, but as you can see, and what I'm going to do as well is I'm going to clean this lid during my break. So I've got a whole new palette ready to start with my yellows. I'm going to do a bit more green as well. But you've got your sky done now, and you've got your flat wash and your wet on wet techniques. And you've done that, and now the next part is we're going to be looking at those daffodils. So take a break and I will see you soon. Okay, so as you can see, I have now left mine to dry. I might have done the hairdryer trick a little bit. Be careful when you're doing that if it's very wet, because the colours might run a little bit. But my paper is now completely dry, and it's time to add the daffodil colours now. And we're going to start with the green stem. So we're going to paint some lovely rich green stems in there. So I'm going to start by mixing up a nice dark green, and I'm going to be a little bit more precise. So it doesn't have to have as much water with this, because I want it to be a nice rich colour that stands out. Okay. So I think that's pretty good. I'm going to make sure I haven't got too much on my brush. Then I'm going to just start going up there with a nice dark green and get those stems painted in. Okay, doesn't have to be exact, you can go over the line, that's fine. The nice thing about watercolours is they're not exact. Right. Okay, so I'm painting some darker green. I'm not actually adding too much water with this. I'm painting a nice dark green so they stand out. And if you remember this one, I'm going to have to just be very careful painting around that petal there. So, and you might want to add a slightly different green on top of it, but also I'm going to paint my grasses there as well. So some of these greener grasses, and just a nice swooping flick is all you need. I want to go all the way up so it really feels like they're dancing in the wind. Okay, go on a little bit more paint onto my brush. Okay, now once you've done those, you might want to add a slightly different green. So I'm going to add a slightly lighter green. I'm going to just mix it there. Or you can add maybe a slightly yellow to that green to change the colour. So remember, you can add to the greens as well. I'm going to add a slightly lighter green. And then if you just want to add just any of those colours to those stems, just to give them slightly more definition. And the more you go over them with slightly different colours, just adds a little bit of depth. Okay, now the other thing that you can do during this, I'm going to just wash my brush. It's got a bit of green on it, but actually that doesn't matter because I'm going to actually mix some of these greens together. So I'm going to add a few more blades of grass here. So I'm going to kind of fill this up with some more grass. So I'm going to just kind of go for it really and see what happens, and just add it to, and can you see I'm just flicking, it's not precise, just flicking, and they might be slightly fainter in the background, just to kind of add a bit more of that sort of grass effect, dancing in the wind. Okay, so once you've done that, you want to make sure it's dry again. So while that's drying, I'm going to properly wash my brush this time because I want to add some yellow. I don't want any green in my yellow because I want a nice bright yellow. And the yellow I'm going to use is this lovely lemon yellow here. And I'm going to mix a lemon yellow onto this palette. And I want it a nice bright colour, so I'm going to make sure I've got lots of paint in there with my water. Lots and lots of paint. Sometimes your palettes can get quite dry and you need to really work to get the paint working again, but I think this is working fine, which is good. Okay, so once you've mixed that lovely lemon yellow, you can have a go, making sure it's dry. You might need to wait a little bit or get your hair dryer or something like that. So we are going to use the brightest yellow, and we are going to, don't want too much water on our brush this time, so if you've got a little bit much, you can always dab it there to get rid of some of that water. I'm going to actually get all my petals, and I'm going to just do it all to start off with in this bright yellow, because I'm going to add colour on top of it. Okay, so you might want to add to it. I'm going to do the bell as well, so I'm going to do it all in this brightest yellow that I can. Looking at my pictures, my daffodils are actually quite small. Your daffodils might be much bigger. They might take over your painting a lot more than mine do. So really have a play. You might want to make your daffodil your biggest part of your painting, and not worry about that wash in the background. So if your painting looks slightly different from mine, that is absolutely fine, because that's the nice thing about art and techniques with art, is that hopefully they're all going to look a little bit different. So not all of our paintings will be the same, and that's what adds interest and creativity. And then once you've learnt these techniques, you might want to go and experiment and do some different daffodil paintings. And you might want to have a go at doing some different types of flowers even. Okay, So I'm quite happy with that. I think I've got them pretty much all done. Now I'm going to wash my brush and I'm just going to get ready. I'm going to make a little bit more of this yellow and I'm going to just get another colour ready. I'm going to make more of, I'm going to make a sort of more orangey yellow here. And as you can see, I've got some green on that, so I'm not going to mix that yet. I'm going to wash my brush now I've picked all that green up. Okay, and then I'm going to make it. So I've got rid of all that green because I don't really want that green. So I'm going to make a more golden yellow here. So a sort of darker golden yellow. Which is going to add some more definition and some more colour on my daffodils. And I'm going to make it quite a strong colour, not so much water, and quite strong. If you want yours to be slightly browner, which they could be, you can maybe add a little bit of another colour in, which will add a brown colour. I'm going to make quite an orange. I'm going to clean that first. Can you see that was quite dirty? So I'm going to clean it using my cleaning water, and then I'm going to mix an orange, because actually sometimes in the centre of daffodils they have orange centres. So I'm going to mix an orange there because I'm going to make one of my daffodils have a nice bright orange centre. And then I'm just going to have a look, and I might see if I can mix a bit of a brownie colour. I might try it on here and see if I can mix a bit of a brownie colour on top of my green. And just have an experiment of what different colours you can mix. So you can see that's gone a lot more yellow now, that green. And then if I add maybe a tiny bit of blue to it, it's going to go a little bit browner. Okay, so just have a little experiment, see if you can make some different browns, or you can use the brown on your palette. Obviously you've got this brown here. But the nice thing about watercolours is it's a really nice way of finding out what colours, what you need to mix in order to make the different colours. So really clean that brush, make sure it's as clean as it can be. That's it. And then I'm going to leave it to dry. And again, it's really important that it's left to dry before you paint over it so it doesn't smudge. And it's also quite important when you're painting these yellows that they don't go into the sky, because that will turn it brown. I'm going to use my hairdryer again, just to make sure it's completely dry. So here we go. Okay, right, so I've done that. And it's now dry, and I'm going to add a little bit of colour into them. So I'm going to make sure that this is nice and pointy. I'm going to start with my orange, and I don't want lots on to start off with. I'm going to just paint a little bit, and I'm going to do it quite thin there because I don't want a lot there. I'm going to have that because actually the inside of daffodils are very often orange, and I'm going to do a little bit there because that's the bit of the cup that you can see. And then inside here as well, because you can see inside there. So I'm going to have that as my orange that you can see inside it. So you might want to have a look at yours and change. You might want to mix a bit of yellow with that, so it's a more yellowy orange. I quite like that orange there. So I'm going to do that as the inside of my cups. I'm going to wash my brush. And now I'm going to use some of the, I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to mix some of this with the orange because I quite like that, and I'm going to use this to create some of the movement and the colours that we can see in the petals. So I'm going to, first of all, I'm going to add, and this is where we had, do you remember when we did thin lines? You're going to need to use your thin lines here. So remember being quite precise with that, not too much paint on your brush, make sure it's dry before you do it. And I'm going to do some thin lines like this. So I'll do some very thin lines, and I'm going to just drag my lines out there to the centre, just to kind of add a little bit of colour and shadow to those petals. Okay, so a little bit of thin lines, adding the colour and shadow to those petals. I think that's a good colour for that. I'm going to do the same around the back of this one. So this one's all around the stem, remembering that one of those petals is there. All around the stem I'm going to add, you might want to add it a slightly darker around the stem. So remember, you can layer it and layer it. Don't use too much water. So I'm not actually adding any more water to my brush here, but I'm going to add a little bit of colour there, just so I can see. I'm kind of dancing a little bit here. Now with this one, I'm going to add it around the petals to show kind of these petals movement, but I'm also, maybe a little bit up there. But the other thing I'm going to do with this one is I'm going to add it on the cup to show kind of the cup standing up, so very thin lines, just to show that cup standing out like that. Okay, so you can add things, add small veins over petals where they cross over each other is a good way of adding some of this colour, this brown. You might want to do a slightly darker yellow. Just play with adding some colours. Remember, each time you add another colour, do wait for it to dry, because you don't want to smudge any of it. And then right at the end, and actually what I am going to do, I'm going to add a little bit more green now I've done this, just to a couple of these up here, but making sure they are dry before you do that. I just want those to stand out really well. So I'm going to wash my brush. And last but not least, I'm going to add a tiny bit of black, and I'm actually just going to make sure I've got it on my brush. I'm not going to mix it with much water at all. I'm going to just get most of that excess water off. I might use my tissue as well to help, so just drop it onto your tissue. And then once I've done that, I'm going to add some little, I might want some more black there, and not much water. So you can see I'm getting rid of the water, but there we go. Can you see it's a bit darker now? So I'm going to add a little bit of black in the middle there to show the centre of the daffodil. You might not want to do black, you might want to do a different colour, but just to add to the centre of that. Okay, once you have done that, and you're very happy with how it's finishes, make sure you wash your brush out, and you're happy with your daffodil painting. You might want to sign your name. I'm going to write Mrs Killick here. Sign your name, you can do your date, and you can have your daffodil picture. Now you can experiment with this. So that's the daffodil picture that's finished now, but you might want to experiment, do much bigger daffodils. You might want to do one big daffodil, building up that yellow, and not worry so much about the wash. It'd be lovely to see your different creations, and you can upload them to assembly at georgegrenville.co.uk, and we can share some of them on our website or in our assembly, and it'd be lovely to see all your different creations of your spring daffodils. Thank you so much for joining me, and I'll see you soon. Bye.